My name is Opal, and I am 53 years old. For the past 15 years, I have built a successful career as an event coordinator, helping families celebrate their most precious moments. I thought I knew everything about creating the perfect celebration until the night my own son threw a party that would change everything between us. I walked into that penthouse apartment, believing I was there as a proud mother, ready to celebrate my boy's biggest achievement. What happened instead left me questioning everything I thought I knew about the young man I had raised. Sometimes, the most beautiful parties hide the ugliest truths, and sometimes, the people we love most are the ones who hurt us deepest. Before I share what happened that night, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button if you have ever felt unappreciated by someone you love, and do not forget to subscribe, because I have so many more stories about life's unexpected lessons. Let me tell you what happened when I decided to help my son celebrate his biggest achievement. Looking back now, I realize the signs were always there, but a mother's love has a way of painting over the cracks until they become impossible to ignore. When Marcus was 10 years old, his father walked out on us without so much as a goodbye note. One day, he was complaining about my cooking, and the next day, his closet was empty. I remember finding Marcus crying in his bedroom, asking why Daddy did not love us anymore. That night, I made a promise to my little boy that I would be both his mother and his father, that I would give him every opportunity to succeed, no matter what it cost me. And it did cost me everything. I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. Monday through Friday, I cleaned offices downtown from midnight until 6 in the morning, my hands raw from industrial cleaning chemicals, my back aching from scrubbing floors on my hands and knees. Then I would race home, shower quickly, and get Marcus ready for school. By 8 in the morning, I was serving breakfast at Miller's Diner, smiling at customers who treated me like I was invisible, saving every tip in a coffee can marked Marcus's future. In the afternoons, I tutored neighborhood kids in math and reading, using the skills from my abandoned college degree to earn just enough to pay for Marcus's piano lessons, his soccer cleats, his school supplies. The house we had lived in during my marriage, the one with the big backyard and the white picket fence, had to go. We moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment above Mrs. Chen's bakery. The smell of fresh bread was nice, but it could not mask the smell of my broken dreams. I had wanted to open my own event planning business, had even saved up enough for a down payment on a small office space. That money became Marcus's college fund instead. Marcus was brilliant, always had been. His report cards were perfect, his teachers adored him, and he had this way of charming everyone he met. When he was 16, he told me he wanted to study business and marketing. "I am going to be successful, Mom," he said, his eyes shining with determination. "I am going to make enough money so you never have to work 3 jobs again. I am going to take care of you the way you have taken care of me." Those words kept me going through the hardest times. When my car broke down and I had to take 3 buses to get to work. When I got pneumonia but could not afford to take time off. When I wore the same 3 outfits to every parent-teacher conference because I had spent my clothing budget on Marcus's graduation suit. Marcus graduated summa cum laude and got a full scholarship to study business at the State University. I cried so hard at his graduation that Mrs. Patterson from the diner had to lend me tissues. My boy was going to have the future I never could. That was enough for me. College changed him, though I told myself it was natural. He made friends with kids who had never worked a day in their lives, whose parents drove luxury cars and owned vacation homes. He started using words I had to look up in the dictionary. He stopped calling as often, and when he did, our conversations felt strained, like he was speaking to me from across a vast canyon. After graduation, Marcus landed a position at one of those Fortune 500 companies downtown. Within 5 years, he had worked his way up to senior marketing director. I was so proud, I kept newspaper clippings about his company in my purse, just in case anyone wanted to hear about my successful son. But success seemed to create distance between us. His phone calls became monthly check-ins, brief and polite. "How are you doing, Mom?" "Fine, sweetheart. How are you?" "Busy with work, but good. I will call you soon." Soon became a month, then 6 weeks, then longer. When he started dating Priscilla 18 months ago, the calls became even less frequent. I had only spoken to her once briefly when I called, and she answered his phone. Her voice was cold, clipped like I was interrupting something important. "Marcus is in the shower," she said. "Can I take a message?" When I said I was his mother, there was a pause. "Oh," she said. "I will let him know you called." He did call back 3 days later. "Sorry, Mom, work has been crazy. Priscilla mentioned you called." I asked about her, tried to show interest in this woman who was clearly important to him. "She is great," he said, but his voice sounded different, careful. "You will love her when you meet her." I held on to that promise that eventually I would be welcomed into this new chapter of his life. I told myself he was just busy building his career, establishing himself. That is what I had raised him to do after all. I had taught him to reach for the stars, and now he was among them. The loneliness I felt was just the price of his success, and I was willing to pay it. The call came on a Tuesday evening in March while I was updating my client files for upcoming spring weddings. Marcus sounded more excited than I had heard him in years. "Mom, I have incredible news," he said, and for a moment, he sounded like the little boy who used to run to me with every accomplishment, every small victory. "I got promoted. They made me vice president of marketing. Can you believe it? Your son is a VP at 38 years old." My heart nearly exploded with pride. I dropped my pen and pressed the phone closer to my ear, wanting to catch every word. "Oh, Marcus, that is wonderful. I am so proud of you, sweetheart. Tell me everything." He talked for 20 minutes about the promotion, about the new responsibilities, about the corner office with windows facing the river. I listened to every word, storing each detail like precious gems. This was my son, my brilliant boy, achieving everything we had dreamed of during those lean years. "I want to celebrate," he said. "Priscilla and I are throwing a party this Saturday at our place. All my colleagues will be there, some important clients. I would love for you to come, Mom. I want to show off my success, and I want you to be part of it." "Our place." He said "our place" so naturally. I realized then that Priscilla was not just his girlfriend anymore. They were building a life together, and he was inviting me into it. "I would be honored to be there," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "What can I bring? You know I love to cook." "Just bring yourself," he said, then paused. "Actually, if you want to make that lasagna I used to love, that would be amazing. I have been telling Priscilla about your cooking." After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, overwhelmed with joy. My son wanted to celebrate with me. He was proud of his success and wanted me to witness it. The years of distance seemed to melt away in that moment. I spent the next 3 days planning. I went to the department store and bought a new dress, navy blue with small white flowers, the most expensive piece of clothing I had purchased for myself in years. I got my hair done at the salon where I usually just got a trim. I bought Marcus a watch, a beautiful piece with his initials engraved on the back, spending money I really could not afford, but feeling like it was worth every penny. The lasagna took me 2 days to prepare. I made the sauce from scratch, using my grandmother's recipe, layering it with 3 kinds of cheese and the finest ground beef I could find. I baked it in my best casserole dish, the one I usually saved for holidays, and wrapped it carefully in my nicest kitchen towels. On Friday night, I called Marcus to confirm the details. Priscilla answered. "Hello, Priscilla," I said warmly. "This is Opal, Marcus's mother. I am so excited to finally meet you tomorrow." There was a pause. "Right, the party." Her voice was flat neutral. "Marcus is in a conference call. The party starts at 7. The address is in the Harbor Towers building, penthouse level." Should I bring anything besides the lasagna? I asked, trying to inject warmth into the conversation. I think we have everything covered, she said. Marcus mentioned you were bringing something homemade. That is sweet. Something in her tone made me feel small, but I pushed the feeling away. She was probably just nervous about meeting me like Marcus had said. I was nervous too. Saturday afternoon, I spent hours getting ready. I polished the watch until it gleamed practice conversations in the mirror and rehearsed stories about Marcus's childhood that I thought his colleagues might enjoy. I wanted to be the kind of mother he could be proud of, someone who fit into his successful new world. As I drove downtown, my homemade lasagna warm in the passenger seat, I felt a happiness I had not experienced in years. My son wanted me there. After all the sacrifices, all the lonely nights, all the years of working myself to the bone, I was finally going to be part of his triumph. I had no idea that I was driving toward the most humiliating night of my life. The Harbor Towers building was more intimidating than I had imagined. 40 stories of glass and steel reaching toward the sky with a doorman in a uniform that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He looked at me skeptically when I said I was there for the Williams party, checking his list twice before directing me to the private elevator that would take me to the penthouse. The elevator ride felt endless. I watched the numbers climb, my stomach fluttering with nervousness and excitement. When the doors finally opened, I stepped into a space that looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the entire city. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over marble floors, and elegant furniture was arranged in conversation areas that looked like they had been designed by professionals. This was where my son lived now. This was the life his hard work had earned him. Priscilla appeared almost immediately, as if she had been waiting by the elevator. She was stunning in the way that seemed effortless, but probably required hours of preparation. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon. Her makeup was flawless, and her black cocktail dress probably cost more than I made in a month. She looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my department store dress and the casserole dish in my hands. "You must be Marcus's mother," she said, extending a manicured hand. "I am Priscilla." "Please call me Opal," I said, balancing the lasagna to shake her hand. "Thank you so much for having me. Your home is absolutely beautiful." "Thank you," she said, taking the casserole dish from my hands. "This is thoughtful. I will put it in the kitchen." The way she said thoughtful made it sound like I had brought a craft project made from popsicle sticks. But I smiled and followed her into the main living area, where about 30 people were already mingling with drinks in their hands. Marcus was across the room, surrounded by a group of men in expensive suits. He looked handsome and confident, every inch the successful executive. When he saw me, he smiled and waved, but he did not come over. Instead, he held up one finger in a "just a minute" gesture and continued his conversation. I stood near the entrance, suddenly feeling very much out of place. Everyone else seemed to know exactly where they belonged, moving through the space with the kind of confidence that comes from always being welcome. The women wore designer dresses and jewelry that caught the light. The men had watches that probably cost more than my car, and everyone spoke in that particular way that educated, wealthy people do, their voices carrying easily over the soft jazz playing in the background. Priscilla reappeared at my side. "Can I get you something to drink?" she asked. "We have wine cocktails, sparkling water." "Wine would be lovely," I said, grateful for something to do with my hands. She returned with a glass of white wine and introduced me to a few people as Marcus's mother. But the conversations felt stilted and brief. These people had nothing in common with a 53-year-old event coordinator who lived above a bakery. When they asked what I did, their smiles became polite and distant. When I mentioned that I had raised Marcus as a single mother, they nodded and quickly changed the subject. After an hour, Marcus still had not come over to talk to me. He was working the room like a politician, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, clearly in his element. Every time our eyes met, he would smile and nod, but he never broke away from his conversations. I began to feel invisible, like I was watching this celebration through glass. So I did what I always did when I felt uncomfortable. I found ways to help. I noticed that the appetizer trays were getting empty, so I asked Priscilla where I could find more food to refill them. "Oh, you do not need to worry about that," she said. "The catering staff will handle it." But there was no catering staff that I could see. Just me feeling useless and out of place watching my son charm a room full of strangers while barely acknowledging my presence. "I really do not mind helping," I insisted. "I coordinate events for a living. I am used to making sure everything runs smoothly." Priscilla studied me for a moment, then smiled in a way that did not reach her eyes. "Well, if you insist on being useful, the kitchen could use some attention." What started as an offer to help quickly became something else entirely. Once Priscilla saw that I was willing to work, she began treating me less like a guest and more like hired help. She directed me to refill ice buckets, wipe down counters, and arrange cheese platters with the same tone she might use to instruct a catering company employee. At first, I did not mind. I told myself I was helping my son's party be a success. This was his big night, his moment to shine, and if I could contribute by making sure his guests were comfortable, then I was happy to do it. I had spent years serving people at the diner. This was not so different. But as the evening progressed, the requests became more numerous and more demanding. Priscilla would appear at my elbow with a new task. "Could you take these empty glasses to the kitchen? The bathroom needs more hand towels. Someone spilled wine on the coffee table." The other guests began to notice me moving around the apartment cleaning and serving. They started directing requests to me as well. "Excuse me, could you get me another martini? Do you know if there are any napkins? Could you empty this ashtray?" I found myself scurrying between the kitchen and the living areas, my new dress becoming damp with perspiration, my carefully styled hair falling loose from its pins. I was no longer Opal Marcus's mother-proud guest at her son's celebration. I had become the help. The worst part was watching Marcus. He saw what was happening. I caught him looking in my direction several times as I balanced trays and wiped surfaces. Our eyes would meet across the room, and I would smile, hoping he would come rescue me from this situation, invite me to join his conversation, introduce me properly to his colleagues. Instead, he would look away quickly and continue talking as if I were just part of the furniture, something to be ignored rather than acknowledged. One particularly humiliating moment came when I was on my hands and knees picking up cocktail napkins that had fallen under a side table. A young woman in a red dress stepped around me without even glancing down, continuing her conversation about vacation homes in the Hamptons. I felt invisible, reduced to nothing more than a cleaning lady working around the important people. When I stood up, my knees aching, I saw Priscilla watching me from across the room. She was talking to another woman, and they were both looking in my direction. Priscilla said something that made the other woman laugh, covering her mouth with her hand, in a way that suggested the comment had been unkind. I excused myself to the bathroom, needing a moment to collect myself. In the mirror, I looked like exactly what I had become, a woman in a wrinkled dress, with tired eyes and disheveled hair. This was not how I had imagined spending my son's celebration. When I came out of the bathroom, I heard Priscilla talking to a group of women near the kitchen. "Some people just cannot help themselves," she was saying. "They see work that needs to be done, and they jump right in. It is actually quite sweet." The tone of her voice made it clear that sweet was not a compliment. I took a deep breath and made a decision. I would finish helping with the party, but then I would find a quiet moment to talk to Marcus. Surely he did not realize how I was being treated. Surely my son, whom I had raised to be kind and respectful, would put a stop to this once he understood what was happening. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. The breaking point came just after 10 o'clock. I was in the kitchen, arranging my lasagna on a serving platter, hoping that people might finally try the dish I had spent 2 days preparing with love. Through the pass-through window, I could hear Marcus talking to a group of his colleagues in the living room. His voice was animated, confident, telling a story that was making everyone laugh. The secret to success, he was saying, is understanding that you have to create your own opportunities. Nobody handed me anything. I am completely self-made. I paused in my work, listening to my son talk about his achievements. I felt a complicated mix of pride and pain. Yes, he had worked hard for his success, but he had not done it alone. Every opportunity he mentioned, every advantage he had gained, had been paid for with my sweat and sacrifice. One of his colleagues, a man with silver hair and an expensive watch, nodded appreciatively. "That is impressive, Marcus. Not everyone has the drive to pull themselves up like that. Tell me, what about your family? Are they proud of what you have accomplished?" I held my breath, waiting for Marcus's answer. This was his chance to acknowledge what we had been through together, to honor the journey that had brought him to this moment. "Well," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the apartment. "My father left when I was young, so it was mostly just me and my mother. She did her best, but honestly, I had to figure most things out on my own." My hand stilled on the serving spoon. She did her best. That was how he described the years I had worked myself nearly to death for his future. Another voice chimed in. "Family can be complicated. The important thing is that you did not let your circumstances hold you back." "Exactly," Marcus agreed. "I could have used my background as an excuse, but I chose to see it as motivation instead." I felt something cold settle in my chest. His background. The poverty we had endured was not a choice. It was the result of his father's abandonment and my determination to give Marcus every possible chance to succeed. But he was talking about our life together, like it was an obstacle he had overcome, rather than a foundation that had been built with love and sacrifice. I was still processing this when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see a woman I did not recognize, tall and elegant, holding an empty wine glass. "Excuse me," she said, assuming I worked there. "Could you tell me where I might find the ladies' room?" Before I could answer, I heard another voice from the living room. A younger man was asking Marcus about the catering for the party. "Who organized all this?" the man asked. "The service has been excellent." I waited for Marcus to explain that there was no catering service, that his mother had been helping to make sure his guests were comfortable. Instead, I heard him laugh. "Oh, we kept it simple tonight. Just hired local help to handle the basics." Hired help. My son had just referred to me, his mother, as hired help. The woman in front of me was still waiting for directions to the bathroom, but I could barely focus on her words. My ears were ringing. My vision was blurring at the edges. 28 years of love, sacrifice, and devotion had just been reduced to hired help. I pointed vaguely toward the hallway and watched the woman walk away. Then I heard the question that would change everything. Another voice from the living room, louder this time. "Speaking of help, who is the woman who has been serving tonight? She seems very attentive." I froze, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. This was it. This was Marcus's opportunity to introduce me properly, to acknowledge who I really was, to correct the misunderstanding that had been building all evening. Instead, I heard my son's voice, casual and dismissive. "Oh, that is just the waitress. Do not mind her." The serving spoon clattered to the floor. My legs went weak. For a moment, I thought I might faint. Just the waitress. Do not mind her. My son, the boy I had raised, the man I had sacrificed everything for, had just dismissed me as if I were nothing more than hired staff. Worse than that, he had told his guests not to mind me, as if I were some sort of inconvenience they should ignore. The room erupted in polite laughter, the kind of comfortable chuckling that happens when everyone agrees that some people simply do not matter. I stood there in that beautiful kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of my attempt to celebrate my son's success, and felt something inside me break. But as quickly as the heartbreak came, it was followed by something else. A cold, clear anger that cut through the pain like a blade. I had spent 30 years allowing people to overlook me, dismiss me, treat me as less than I was. I had accepted it because I thought it was the price of love, the cost of sacrifice. But I would not accept it from my own son. Not tonight. Not ever again. I straightened my shoulders, smoothed down my wrinkled dress, and walked toward the living room. It was time for Marcus to learn that his waitress had something to say. The transition from kitchen to living room felt like walking through water. Every step was deliberate, purposeful. The conversations around me seemed to fade into background noise as I approached the group where Marcus stood still basking in the attention of his colleagues and friends. He was in the middle of another story about his rapid rise through the company ranks when he noticed me approaching. For just a moment, our eyes met, and I saw a flicker of something that might have been recognition, or perhaps concern. But he quickly looked away and continued talking, as if I were simply part of the staff moving through the room. I stopped directly beside the group, close enough that everyone could see me clearly, close enough that my presence could not be ignored. For several seconds, I simply stood there, listening to my son describe his latest business triumph to an audience that hung on his every word. "Excuse me," I said quietly, but my voice carried clearly through the space. The group turned toward me with expressions of mild confusion. They had been focused on Marcus's story, and my interruption was unexpected. Marcus's face went pale, but he tried to maintain his composure. "Mom," he said under his breath, "what are you doing?" I looked around the circle of faces, these successful, educated people who had spent the evening assuming I was invisible, and spoke clearly. "I think there has been a misunderstanding tonight." The room was beginning to quiet around us. Other conversations were trailing off as people sensed that something significant was happening. Priscilla appeared from somewhere behind me, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. "I am not the waitress." I continued, my voice steady and calm. "I am Marcus's mother." A ripple of confusion passed through the group. The man who had asked about the help looked genuinely puzzled, glancing between Marcus and me as if trying to solve an equation that did not add up. "I am the woman who worked 3 jobs to put this man through college," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. "I cleaned office buildings at midnight, scrubbing floors until my hands bled. I served breakfast at Miller's Diner every morning for 8 years, saving every tip in a coffee can, so my son could have piano lessons and soccer cleats and everything else he needed." Marcus stepped toward me, his face flushed. "Mom, please, you are embarrassing yourself." "I am embarrassing myself," I repeated, and for the first time there was steel in my voice. "I tutored neighborhood children every afternoon to pay for your school supplies. I sold the house we lived in, the house with the yard where you learned to ride your bike, so I could afford your college tuition." The room was completely silent now. Even the background music seemed to have stopped. Every person at the party was listening, watching as 28 years of suppressed truth finally found its voice. "I lived on pasta and hope for 5 years while you finished your MBA. I wore the same 3 outfits to every school function because I had spent my clothing budget on your graduation suit. I gave you everything I had and everything I was because I believed in your potential." Priscilla tried to intervene. "This is really not appropriate, Marcus. You should handle this." I turned to face her directly. "What is not appropriate is treating people like they are invisible. What is not appropriate is assuming that someone's worth is determined by the work they do or the clothes they wear." Then I looked back at Marcus, my son, the little boy who used to promise he would take care of me when he grew up. "I came here tonight proud of your success. I spent money I could not afford on a new dress And a gift for you, because I wanted to look like someone you could be proud to call your mother. I made your favorite lasagna from scratch because I thought you might want to share a piece of your childhood with your new friends. My voice was shaking now, but not with fear, with the power of finally speaking truth. Instead, I spent the evening being treated like hired help while you stood by and watched. And when someone asked who I was, you did not just fail to defend me. You dismissed me. You told them not to mind me as if I was some inconvenience they should ignore. Marcus's face was red now, whether from shame or anger, I could not tell. You are taking this the wrong way, Mom. I never meant— What did you mean? I interrupted. When you told them I was just the waitress, what exactly did you mean? The question hung in the air like smoke. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it, unable to find words that could undo what he had said. I reached behind me and untied the apron I had unconsciously put on while working in the kitchen. I had not even realized I was wearing it until that moment. I folded it carefully and placed it on the coffee table in front of the group. I am not your waitress, I said quietly. I am not your hired help. I am your mother. The woman who loved you enough to sacrifice her own dreams so you could live yours. I looked around the room one more time at all the faces staring back at me in various states of shock, embarrassment, and understanding. And I deserve better than this. The silence that followed my words felt like a living thing, heavy and electric. I could hear my own heartbeat, the distant hum of the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the soft exhale of 30 people who had just witnessed something they had not expected to see. I turned and walked toward the elevator, my head high, my steps steady. Behind me, I could hear the rustle of movement, urgent whispers, the sound of Marcus calling my name. Mom, wait, please. I pressed the elevator button and stood waiting, looking straight ahead. The doors seemed to take forever to open, but I did not turn around, did not give in to the impulse to look back at the life I was walking away from. Marcus reached me just as the elevator arrived. Mom, please do not leave like this. Let me explain. I stepped into the elevator and finally turned to face him. He looked younger, suddenly more like the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms than the successful executive who had just dismissed me in front of a room full of strangers. There is nothing to explain, Marcus, I said softly. You made your choice tonight. You chose to be someone I do not recognize. I was just trying to fit in, he said desperately. These people, this world, it is complicated. I did not want them to think. To think what? That you came from humble beginnings, that your mother worked multiple jobs to support you, that you were loved and cared for by someone who was not ashamed of honest work. The elevator doors started to close, but Marcus held them open. I am sorry, he said, and there were tears in his eyes. I am so sorry, Mom. I did not mean for it to happen like this. But it did happen like this, I replied. And that tells me everything I need to know about who you have become. I gently moved his hand away from the elevator doors. I love you, Marcus. I will always love you. But I will not allow anyone, not even you, to treat me like I am less than I am. The doors closed between us, and I rode down 40 floors in silence, watching the numbers decrease as I descended from his world back to mine. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. I walked to my car, slowly processing what had just happened. I had finally stood up for myself, finally said the words that had been building inside me for years. It should have felt like victory, but instead, it felt like the end of something precious and irreplaceable. The drive home was a blur of city lights and tears I could no longer hold back. By the time I reached my little apartment above the bakery, I was emotionally exhausted. I sat in my car for a long time, looking up at my modest windows, thinking about the contrast between my simple life and the glittering penthouse I had just left. Marcus called 17 times that night. I let every call go to voicemail, but I could not bring myself to listen to his messages. I was not ready to hear his explanations or his apologies. I needed time to understand what had happened and what it meant for our future. The next few weeks were difficult. Marcus continued calling, leaving increasingly desperate messages. He sent flowers, cards, emails. But I was not ready to forgive, not because I did not love him, but because I needed him to understand the gravity of what he had done. The turning point came 6 weeks later when Marcus showed up at my door unannounced. He looked terrible, like he had not been sleeping well. When I opened the door, he was holding a resignation letter. "I quit my job," he said simply. "Marcus, what are you talking about?" "I quit. I could not keep working with those people, knowing how they think, how they see the world, how I let them change me." He looked down at his hands. "Priscilla and I broke up. She said I was throwing my life away over family drama." I invited him in, and we sat at my small kitchen table, the same table where he had done his homework as a child. We talked for hours. He told me how miserable he had been since the party, how he had replayed that night over and over, seeing it through my eyes for the first time. "I became someone I hate," he said. "I became the kind of person who judges others by their job or their address or their clothes. I became the kind of person who would be ashamed of his own mother." The conversation was painful, but it was necessary. Marcus had to understand that success without character was meaningless, that fitting in with people who required you to deny your roots was not worth the price. It took time, but we rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect. Marcus found a new job with a smaller company whose values aligned better with who he really was. He learned to be proud of where he came from instead of ashamed of it. He started visiting regularly, eating my cooking, listening to my stories about the neighborhood and my work. Most importantly, he learned that love without respect is not really love at all. The experience taught me something equally valuable. I learned that I had been accepting less than I deserved for far too long, not just from Marcus, but from others in my life. I had confused sacrifice with self-abnegation, love with enabling. Standing up for myself that night was not just about defending my dignity. It was about reclaiming my worth. Now, when I coordinate events for my clients, I carry myself differently. I command respect not just through my skills, but through my presence, my refusal to be diminished or overlooked. I have learned that teaching people how to treat you is one of the most important lessons you can give, especially to those you love most. Sometimes people ask me if I regret confronting Marcus that night, if I wish I had handled it differently. The answer is no. That night, painful as it was, gave both of us a gift. It showed Marcus who he was becoming and gave him the chance to choose a different path. And it showed me that I had the strength to demand the respect I had always deserved but had never required. The relationship I have with my son now is deeper and more honest than it ever was before. It is built on mutual respect rather than obligation, on genuine affection rather than guilt or duty. He introduces me to his friends and colleagues with pride, tells stories about my strength and sacrifice values, my opinions, and seeks my advice. That night, I learned that love without respect is just pretty words, and I decided I deserved both. Sometimes the people we love most need to see us stand up for ourselves, not just for our own sake, but for theirs as well. Because when we teach them that we have value, we teach them to value themselves and others properly too. The greatest gift you can give someone you love is the example of self-respect. And sometimes that gift comes wrapped in the most difficult conversations you will ever have. Thank you for listening to my story today. I would love to hear about times when you have had to stand up for yourself with someone you care about. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt invisible or taken for granted? How did you handle it? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And do not forget to like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength in difficult moments, and share this with someone who might need to hear that they deserve respect from everyone in their lives, especially the people they love most. Remember, you teach people how to treat you, and it is never too late to start demanding better. Until next time, take care of yourselves and know your worth.